There is a global generational gap, not just in the US where I'm from, not just here in Egypt, but across the world. This divide, it's so wide that it's less of a gap and more of a chasm, and it gets wider and wider over time. This chasm, it's so wide that any conversation we try and have just becomes echoes, and we're left with echoes screaming at echoes. So here's the plan. I'm going to provide you with the proof and the provocation for this generational chasm. Then I'm going to show you how to bridge the chasm between the older and the younger generation. And I know what some of you are thinking. This kid better not call me old. So, as to not offend anyone, I'll let you decide which generation you fall under. And I think the echoes of said bridge will lead to a reduction in conflict from the personal to the political. So, let's start with the provocation, and on the way you'll see the proof. Why is there a generational gap? My father and I had a task. We both had a speech to give, but we had different ideas on how to prepare for that speech. My father said we should grab some paper, write them out. I said, why use paper when we have cell phones? That is a huge gap in thinking. I began to wonder, why? Why is it that my father wanted to grab paper and I went straight for my phone? Next, I thought, what else could this gap spread to? Experiences in my educational background came to me, specifically around note-taking. If you have someone from the older generation as an authority figure, think teacher or boss, and they are providing instruction to members of the younger generation, and the younger ones pull out a cell phone, the older generation, more times than not, will become upset because they believe the younger generation isn't paying attention. But if we swap out the cell phones for a piece of paper, the older generation thinks that the younger ones are paying more attention than if they had nothing in front of them at all. It all comes down to one reason, the same reason as the generation gap: trust, or the lack thereof. You pull out a piece of paper, and the older generation trusts that you are paying attention. That trust is not extended if you pull out a cell phone. There is a generational gap, and to me, it is rooted in a lack of trust. And it goes both ways. The younger generation doesn't trust the older generation. People in my generation, we've had thoughts that the older generation wouldn't allow us to finish. Ideas that we felt weren't taken seriously. Experience is the best teacher. Something I've often been told, a great saying, but one that's been used to exclude those seen to have less experience. But do not equate a lack of experience for not worthy of listening to. Back in 2020, my father was invited to a UN summit. He brought me along with him. During that summit, one of the speakers asked the audience a question. What is the global definition of poverty? Only one hand raised to answer. Mine. The speaker, along with everyone else in the older generation, was shocked when a 14-year-old answered the question correctly. $1.90, according to the World Bank. It has since rose to $2.20, if you were wondering. But someone from the younger generation would have been surprised that I wasn't interrupted. The younger generation doesn't trust that the older generation is listening to us. That's why the younger generation relies so heavily on text, because you can't interrupt a text. You can delete it, you can ignore it, but you can't interrupt it. Now you see that there is a trust issue on both sides. How do we fix it? Well, I have some suggestions. First, to the younger generation, we should try and be more upfront with our intentions. Go to your teacher or your employer and say, hey, I'm really planet conscious and I like to save paper. So is it all right if I take notes on my phone? This can immediately build trust in the older generation, one that is consistently saying, pay attention. To the older generation, try to start off communicating over the medium that the younger generation is most comfortable with. 9 times out of 10, it's text. And then begin to integrate your preferred method. Even when trying to get information out of the younger generation, you can still build trust if you care enough to search, not just check a box. Parents, tell me if this is relatable. When a parent wants to get information from their kid about how their day went, what do they normally say? Something along the lines of, how was your day? But what do parents always get in response, especially from teenagers? Fine, good, okay. But next time, instead, try asking this. What is one good thing and one bad thing about your day? Or what were the 3 most important things that happened today? It takes a bit more care, but it builds trust in a generation screaming, listen to us. The older generation is saying, pay attention. We are trying to teach you something. The younger generation is saying, listen to us. We are trying to tell you something. That's how we fix it. The big solution is to treat people how they want to be treated. When we make it a habit to treat people how they want to be treated, we get less conflict. Less conflict between parents and their children in the same household. Less conflict between new employees and their bosses in the same company. Less conflict between different countrymen in the same land. And this reduction in conflict can echo throughout the world. These changes, they may seem small, but small things, they echo. They echo throughout living rooms, classrooms, and throughout boardrooms. And maybe, just maybe, they can echo into something bigger. We don't need to erase the generation gap. What we need is to build a bridge of trust across it. Thank you, and have a good evening.